I'm here with Rachel Meers. Rachel's been with our company for 10 years. She has been an incredible contribution to our organization. She's done incredible things to help Treeline grow. And presently, she's the director of partnerships. She has been in that role for 7 years. She's mastered it. She's mastered her career, and she's really helped Treeline grow to the company it is now. She's part of the operating committee, and she has done so much in her career and so much for Treeline that I thought it might be wise to introduce her to our community and maybe share some tips and advice on how she's sustained her career and what she's found to be most successful. So before further ado, I would just like to introduce Rachel Meers. And also, Rachel, if you don't mind, maybe you could do a quick introduction to who you are and how you got to Treeline.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Dan. I've been, like you said, with the company for over 10 years. And if you'd asked me, 10 years ago what I wanted to do, I never would have said sales recruiting. I never would have said sales. I don't think a lot of young women in general think about sales as a career. So it was just never something that crossed my mind. But I was super involved in college. I was in clubs, I was in a sorority, I was an orientation leader, I was a tour guide. And so I've just always been really outgoing, and I always knew I was passionate about like helping people. And I wanted to get into recruiting, but I wanted to get into college recruiting. And so I never saw sales recruiting as a career. And I'll never forget when I was interviewing, I think you asked me like, well, why do you want to be in sales? And I was like, whoa, I don't, I want to be in recruiting. And so, just kind of fell into the role in some respect, but it's been a great journey. And I think what's really kept me here at Treeline is being able to grow, professionally, personally. But like you said, my role now as director of partnerships isn't a role that existed 7 years ago. So it's something that I worked with you and other folks on the team to create. And so I've just really found a home, I think, at Treeline and really been able to grow into the role.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. You've done so much for us too, right? As a company, we've rebooted our sales organization. We've been in business for 24 years, and we've rebooted it quite a few times. It seems as technology changes, we're even kind of retooling it more often than we had done in the past. And you head up a lot of those initiatives. So what do you think has changed the most in sales? And what do you think has been kind of the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I think things are changing every day, right? And so one thing we always talk about is you've got to find time to work on the business, not work in the business, right? Like you can be so consumed by I've got to hit my daily goals and my daily tasks that you never go back and just like think and stop and like critically look at the business and say like, what could I be doing better? What is working, but what could be better? And so I kind of keep a running document myself of like things I like that we're doing, things I don't like, things I think we should change. And I come back to it all the time. And I take that from customer feedback, client feedback, team feedback, myself going through things, new tools on the market. So a lot has changed. But I think when you look at professional selling environments, everyone has goals that they're looking to achieve. And there's different ways to get there. So I think building on that, like I said, kind of even creating this role that I'm in now was because we looked at the market and we said, geez, we work so hard to get one client, we sign them, we fill a role, and then we never work with them again. Like, where is it broken? And we have a great relationship. We have a great brand. We were really well known, but we just weren't staying top of mind. And so I think creating this role and having somebody that was like really just dedicated to our customers and the success, I think that's something that changed for us. But I also think that's something that's changed just across the sales landscape. I think 10, 15 years ago, you had like customer success, but not really client success. And to really create like a true partnership and make sure that you're spending all this money and all this budget to get them in the door, you could be maximizing those relationships for both you and the client. And sometimes it just falls flat. And I think that's been a big shift across the sales landscape.
Yeah, it's funny when you bring up like customer success, you're so right. Like, it was an issue that we had. We pivoted, we fixed it, we changed it. But when you're assessing your outbound motion and your kind of renewal motion, how do you, like, what is that process? What does it look like to keep a customer happy, but renew them month after month or year after year?
Well, yeah, I think like brand is really important and just keeping like honest dialogue and open like expectations. So many companies will do anything to like just get a client to sign and just say, oh, yeah, you're the perfect company. Every candidate's going to want to come work for you. Where we'll have a lot of honest dialogue, I think. And I think clients appreciate it of like, hey, here's what we're hearing from the market. And here's what we've helped with other clients that have been in similar situations. You want somebody that can bring in $10 million and you've never closed $1 million, right? Like if your goals are so aloft and you've got no one to kind of hold you accountable, it can be really tough. And so I think being really real and genuine and honest with clients and just from the get-go, right? Even when we sign them, we say like, here's what we think we might have some challenges with, but here's how we're going to help you through that process. So I think building that reputation strengthens your brand and your credibility because we're not just telling them what they want to hear. We're giving them like facts from candidates, from the market, and really helping strengthen that relationship, and helping them build more success, right? If they get successful hires, they're going to want to come back to us and use us again and refer us to their friends. And so really making sure it's a successful journey and it doesn't just stop at the day the candidate starts, I think is really critical to expanding, again, even the inbound that comes in from those referrals.
With when I hear you say that, it's so true. One thing you do incredibly well is you build long-lasting relationships. A lot of it's due to your relationship, our ability to deliver transparency, setting accurate expectations, honesty, and honest dialogue. But what do you think the secret to your success is, or what are some of the tools you'll use to continue to foster those relationships over time? Right? We sign a new client. You build an incredible relationship with them. We help them hire 2 or 3 really talented sales professionals. But then what? What do you do? What is your strategy to stay in touch with them, to drip on them? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think setting up, a good CRM is always great. Keeping notes, there's so many candidates and clients out there, you've got to kind of keep it condensed somewhere of like, hey, they just went on a trip with their wife or they're doing this for their anniversary, right? So like keeping those things top of mind, I think is always important. And it's still genuine, like when they call me, they're asking about me and my family and my daughter. I appreciate that as well. So I think keeping track of like the little things is important. But also like the big milestones, you're keeping those kind of radars out there. If they get promoted or you see a couple people on their team were promoted, or they just got a funding round or they built a new partnership, it's just staying top of mind with a lot of those little things, which can be as easy as like liking and sharing content and commenting on it on LinkedIn, but it's genuine, it's like, oh, this is awesome. Like I'd like to see our partners are doing well. The more they grow their business, like the more the need they're going to have to like hire great people. Right. So it's all like comes full circle, I think. But you've got to be organized. You've got to like know what you're looking for as far as like those signals. And that can be different for every business. But I know for us, a lot of those key things, again, funding or expansion, new partnerships, new branding, right? They're going to be looking for, the kind of the next level of talent.
Are there certain triggers you look for at companies? Or, is there, or are you that close to kind of your network where you're just always in touch or in tune? How does it work?
Yeah, I try to stay pretty in touch. I would say at least once a quarter, following up. Maybe that's not like a direct email, like, hey, are you hiring? But a quick call, or like I said, a quick LinkedIn like or share of their content. If they have something like new they posted, it's just staying top of mind. And I think you can only do that obviously so exponentially, but usually I'm looking at our clients that we've worked with in the last 2 to 3 years for the most part. And a lot of that is, they still keep coming back. And eventually they get to a point for us where, probably they get too big and they don't really need our support as much, but they might call just to pick our brain on what's going on with the market. And so it's, staying in tune and in touch for that. I've got a good client that we worked with for like 5 years. They grew to a certain point where they hired, 2 in-house recruiters. And they said, hey, we just can't use the budget anymore. But they still call and they ask for advice on things. And it's, I'm still going to be the person or the partner they need for advice, because eventually they might have a difficult search, or they're going to remember that and they're going to refer you to other people. So, you've got to be wise with your time, but I think there's also like strategic partners out there that you want to stay in front of as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, you really are a big piece of the brand, right? You are in front of people. You're the brand ambassador. You're building relationships. And of course, you have a strong recruiting team behind you that really helps us get these jobs filled quickly and effectively. But let me just switch gears for a second. So we know how awesome you are at managing existing clients, but you also build the sales motion around net new business and outbound. So what have you seen change over the past few years when it comes to outbound? And where are you right now in the business? What do you see changing? And maybe potentially, what are some of the tools you're using to help build a strong outbound, an outbound motion?
Yeah, I think, again, we talk about working on the business. There's so much out there in sales. There's a lot of noise. There's a million different AI tools and little things you can use to do this or do that. And so it can be really overwhelming. I think we've had to pivot our sales strategy pretty drastically in the last like 4 years, 5 years since COVID. I think we shifted, and then the market shifted, and then we shift, and then the market shifts, right? So you have to kind of be always staying on top of what's going on, what's relevant, while also investing enough time into a platform or a tool to understand it, know how it works, figure out the ins and outs, and make it successful for you. And then also know when it's time to pivot away from that tool. So, because it's not working for you anymore, right? So, for part of our strategy for a while, we were using Apollo, and we were really like bare bones using it. And then I stepped in and I did as much research as I could. I invested the time to like watch videos, go to webinars, read their material, and figure out what can I do to really make this work. We got that going. We had a great engine. It was awesome. We had a ton of, inbound leads coming from all of our outbound prospecting, putting them in campaigns and people coming in. So that was great. And then maybe 6 months, 8 months ago, we were like, this seems broken. Like the leads aren't coming in anymore. We've got to pivot our strategy. And so then it's, using my team and you and I and kind of going back to the market and saying what else is out there and trying a new strategy, knowing that it's going to fail and knowing that it's probably going to take at least a quarter to get it right to really see if it's effective or not, which is really hard in sales when you've got goals you're trying to hit and you've got numbers, right? You've got to keep going. So we pivoted away from Apollo. We've tried Lead IQ. We've tried Outreach. We've tried, Sales Navigator. We've tried a ton of different tools. And right now we've really been leaning in hard on some of the AI tools like Clay. And we're certainly not experts on it, but trying to invest the time to figure it out and create these tables and these waterfalls and like figure out what's the best way to prospect for leads. So it can be distracting. Like there's a lot of shiny things out there and you do have to figure out that where you want to invest your time. But in order to do that, you've got to carve out the time to figure out the tools and see if you like them. So it's a lot of trial and error. And we are certainly not a plug and play sales environment where someone comes in, it's like, here's your playbook. It's like, here's what we're doing today. It might change tomorrow, which can be really frustrating too.
Yeah, I know. Like, are we crazy, or is that like every sales organization, right? Things are moving so fast and changing so quickly. We talk to so many companies. We're on the front lines talking to these organizations. And I feels like just as many companies are trying to figure it out because it's moving so quickly and the technology is developing so fast that everyone's trying to stay ahead of the game, but it causes a lot of disruption. Don't you think? Don't you think managing change, like think about change, like when we're managing change, right? We went from a company that was 80% inbound a few years ago to 80% outbound, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big change. That is a huge change while, keeping revenue, even, and now looking to grow at 25% this year. So how do you manage change with your team? Because it's disruptive, it's challenging. Not everyone is comfortable with change. So what do you think are some of the key elements to managing a sales team that needs to change to stay competitive in today's market without burning them out or blowing them up? Like bend, don't break them, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is around like accountability and like I'm not going to ask somebody to do something I'm not going to do. So I'm very much a player coach in my role. I mean, I have to be. We're a small company. No one here is just a manager, right? So I think I'm also on the front lines. I'm also trying strategy. I'm also trying different things. And I think just like letting my team know like it is okay to fail and this is not bulletproof. This is not a proven solution, but either I can try it for 90 days and see if it's successful, or like you can try it too, and we can pivot and we can try different things and find out what works. So then it can be really successful. So I think setting the expectation that it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be mistakes. Failure is part of the game, right? If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. You're not building upon momentum to see what works and what doesn't work. So I think that is super helpful. And then I think when it comes to managing change, the accountability of this is what we need to do, and how I get there and how you get there might be completely different. And I think that's always really eye-opening because everyone's strategy can be a little different. And I don't expect that the way I do it is like the number one most perfect way. It's like, oh, let's take a little bit from here and a little bit from here, and let's create a strategy that works across the board for our team. So I like to be able to like discuss a plan, give direction, and then just like hold my team accountable. It's okay, this is what we talked about. And in our next meeting, it's like, all right, what did you do? How did you get there? What have you found? And so I think that's like a big part of like the way I manage and the way like we hold our team accountable.
Do you feel as though you have to sell the vision as to what we're trying to, not sell the vision, but openly communicate what's broken, why we have to change, and why we have to go through this painful process to figure out a new process that works?
Yeah.
How do you get people on board? Because it's people get comfortable, right? They like doing what they're doing. They know how to do the job as it is. And all of a sudden we flip it upside down and say, that's great, but it doesn't work anymore. We're doing this. How do you
Yeah.
get them on board?
That's like the hardest part, I think. The belief in trying something new. Like I said, everyone on our team has a goal. They've got a revenue number they want to hit. They're heavily influenced by their commission. And if they've got a strategy that works and they know, like, okay, if I send 100 messages, I'm going to get 10 back. And that's my goal. And that's all I want to do because I know it works. And I can just send these 100 messages every week. And it's like, okay, but what if you could send 15 messages and get 10 back? Like, work with me here, right? It's like, I'm not, not trying to promise it, but it's seeing that vision or that light at the end of the tunnel. And I think a lot of people are resistant to it because they're just comfortable. And so that's why I talk about like working on the business is like putting aside time where it's like, hey, I know you think your goal is 100 outbounds, but it's not. Your goal is 0. I need you to actually, your only goal this week is to come up with a new strategy. And that can be really like daunting and really hard for people. But I think just lowering the pressure sometimes when you're trying to change is important, that because people get so hyper focused on, but I have to hit my 100. I have to hit my, it's like, no. Like, hold on, step back, like work with me on this. We don't know what the goal is going to be because if this is successful, maybe the goal is 10 or maybe with a whole new goal. So I think just being comfortable with change, it's really hard. And I think it's really hard to get people on board. And so that's why I like to maybe even step in at first and say, okay, I've been doing this for a week and here's what I found in a week. I don't think a week is enough data, but you need more. I think we switched our LinkedIn strategy recently. And one of the recruiters came to us and said, well, I sent 15 emails and I don't think they're working. It's like 15, like it's enough, not enough data, tell me you sent 1,500 and then tell me what you found from the data, right? Like, not saying everything's going to work every time, but you've got to put at least a few weeks, if not more, into it to see if it's successful.
Do you think it's easier? So obviously, Treeline's been virtual for years now, ever since COVID, which was a really interesting pivot for us. But we're nimble. We move pretty quickly. We've been in business for 24 years, and so we're definitely adaptable. And all of it's based on the same strategy and philosophy that you're discussing now. Do you think it's more challenging in a virtual environment to bring people along with the vision or the change, or do you see does it not really matter?
I think with the right team, it doesn't really matter. but I say that with like a carrot of like, it's really nice to be in an office. And when you have an idea or brainstorm, just grab everybody, go to a conference room and like whiteboard it. Or, I think we've adapted a lot of tools to get around that. But I don't think you can ever get the same thing you can get out of that in-person collaboration and just ideas flowing. But I think our team is really strong of like, hey, got a minute? And we all hop on a video call and like, hey, here's what I've been trying. Here's what I've been doing. And sometimes it's like a really half-baked idea. So maybe it can be more distracting. But you do that if you were in an office, right? Hey, I'm working on this. This is what I've done today. What have you done? So you can't like lean over someone's shoulder and like look at it. You can't sit in a room and collaborate. But, I think staying, whether it's Slack or we use GChat, having like kind of that constant communication, being able to collaborate that way, I think is really helpful. And I do think you can get a lot accomplished in a remote environment. There's less distractions, right? There's less like office politics or gossip or people like tossing a football over your head, right? There's a lot less distractions, but then you can say there's also a lot more distractions because you're working from home, right? There's other things that can pull you in a million different directions. So I think you just got to figure out how to stay focused. But I do think that, the technology has evolved since, even in the last 5 years since we first went remote to really having a lot of areas you can collaborate on. You can all be in the same platform building cadences or building outreach strategies, and I can see what everyone's doing real time. So I think that's also really helpful.
You bring up a good point. So there are so many distractions in office and out of office. So how do you, you've been doing this now, what, 5 years? How do you manage your family life and your home life? And because you do it very well, you're like in a different state every other week, it seems, and you still manage it. You've got a young toddler at home. So how do you manage your work life and family life in this type of environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's definitely not for everybody. Certain people just work well in a really adaptable environments. I'm definitely one of them. I have a great support system. I think having I'm almost 2-year-old now, and that was a huge adjustment. Luckily for me, my husband runs his own company, so he has a little bit more flexibility during the day, during like the kind of the golden hours, 9 to 5. And he works more that like 8 o'clock at night and on after our daughter goes to bed. Like that's his time to really sit down and focus. So that's really helped me. I think a lot of it is just a positive mindset and like your ability to focus a lot on yourself. So I've always believed like if you're going to do something, do it well. And so I have a high level of accountability for myself, and just doesn't matter if I'm at home in Florida, in Maine. I do travel a lot. It can be overwhelming, but it's like, hey, at the end of the day, like I know what my goals are and I know what I need to get done. And I also have a team that's relying on me and holding me accountable. So I think that's part of it, but I couldn't do it without having a great support system. And I think also at our company, we've had that flexibility of like, hey, we're all families, right? We all have things that go on outside of work. We get it. You need to take time, but like at the end of the day, like we're a small company, so you're still accountable for what you have to get done. So you have to be okay working in that type of environment. It's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, there are things that come up during the day for each one of us. We definitely have the work-life balance, but you'll send an email at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, right? You may have something else going on during the day, and then you pick up in the evening, but you need to have the mentality and the accountability, right? You have to be accountable for your tasks and accomplishing and getting them done by the end of the day, which you do every single time consistently.
Yeah, I think it's just like I said, it's that accountability to myself of like, well, I said I was going to get this done, and like at 5 o'clock I shut down, right? Like that is my life right now. At 5 o'clock I shut down. If I get an email at 5:05, like I'm probably not responding to it, right? Like that's my time to be a mom and go outside with my daughter and get dinner ready and do bath time and bedtime, right? And like so that is at 5 o'clock, that is my number one priority. My number one priority is not my job. It's my other job. So I do that. And then, yeah, if I need to plug back in at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, I do, right? If I didn't get something done during the day, or, we have a lot of clients that are international and they'll send emails at, middle of the night, right? So I know I can log in early in the morning if I need to and get some stuff done. I think there's a good balance there. And I'm appreciative that my team also like respects that balance. Like, hey, I know it's like after 5, like, I know you might not be at your desk right now. Right. But obviously if there's a client, it's important, like, there's times you'll do it. But I also think you have to have some sort of boundary, or else it's really hard to balance the work-life portion of it. I think that's important too, right? Like if you can hold yourself accountable during the day, then you don't feel guilty at like 5:05. It's like, nope, like this is what I'm doing right now. But if I need to plug in, I will. But it's like, oh, if you were going to the gym, going out to lunch, whatever, it's your time during the day, then maybe you said, okay, I'd rather do that during the day and work till 7. So some of our team has that flexibility. But for me, that's just not right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get a lot going on, right? So how do you, because you have so much going on, how do you avoid like burnout, or how do you stay so positive? What are the things you do to, get past the workload, both at work and at home, so that, again, you're not burning out, and then you still smile every day and you still come to work happy and positive and, ready to take on the world?
Yeah, I think the first year coming back after maternity leave was really hard. Just like you're getting pulled in a million different directions. And so that was really hard to like come back and like find that same balance I had before, because obviously you don't have the same balance you had before, right? There's a whole nother person that needs way more time and attention than like you can give to yourself or anything else. So now that period has passed, and I would say for that, you just kind of figure it out, you get through it. I don't know that there's like an answer. But now that period's passed, I think it's, we've got a good kind of system. I like to go to the gym in the morning. It gets me like ready for the day. Then I'm like, kind of plugged in. I'm ready to go. I'm focused. Like that keeps me motivated. And then, just trying to stay positive. Like, it stinks if like a deal doesn't come through or you're waiting on things, but the end of the day, like it is just as part of the job, so you've got to kind of power through it. And that can be tough. There's it's kind of a kick in the teeth when you lose a deal or something doesn't go your way. But you just focus on, okay, where are we going to get the next one? And I don't know how you do that. I guess that's just part of like my mindset and my mentality. I think you used to wake up and say, today is going to be the best day of my life. I've always said, my favorite quote is, you can't live a positive life with a negative mind. Like, it's just that's who I am. Like, that's what I think about. Just like, what is the best part of the situation, or what's the positive way you can spin something or look at it? Because if you don't do that, it's really easy to get really like downtrodden and like beat up.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I actually think it takes work to be positive and to always be positive. Like, people think, oh, you know what, Rachel is just a happy person. Dan's just a happy person. They're positive individuals. It's not true. I mean, we all go through all of our challenges through life, and you have to work really hard on being and having a positive mental attitude, right? If you're not working at it, there are plenty of things in life that will bring you down, and you just have to make sure you're not a victim to life, and you don't let those things bring you down, and that you always look forward and stay positive. So I totally appreciate what you're saying. I can't think of a time where I'd say at this point, this is Rachel's worst day ever. I don't think I've ever even seen you have like a bad day, right? I'm sure you have, but you don't show it. That's for sure.
No, and there's stress on the job. There's things that are somewhat out of your control. You're trying to like cover every aspect of something, and then you get thrown a huge curveball, right? Like, it happens. There's things that stress you out for sure. But I think I'm pretty direct. So I don't think there's, I think I definitely, people know how I'm feeling, I would say. But I think you can do that and still be positive and be like, okay, I get it. Like, that's what happens. Like, but here's what we need to do. Like, here's what we're going to change. Here's what we need to do to move forward. And I think that just keeps everyone on like the same playing field, and just trying to be like as open and honest as I go about my day with like what's going on with all of our clients or all the candidates. And so just trying to keep that mentality and work with that with the team, because I know it can be frustrating, but at the end of the day, the clients are the clients, right? They're the ones that pay for our services. They're the ones that are paying fees. And they want what they want. And so, you can give them guidance and you can appease them. But at the end of the day, if they decide they're not going to hire someone, or they don't want to talk to a candidate, you can push back to a certain level. But it's their decision, right? And so that can be really frustrating with our team if they say, well, this is what they told us we're looking for. And okay, but they don't want to talk to that candidate. What do you want me to do? Like that can be frustrating. But not letting that like get the best of you and just trying to say, okay, but here's what they said, and here's how we're going to pivot, and here's what we need to do next. Like, that's how I try to look at it, is like, okay, but what can we take out of that conversation? Like, what can we do to change and like ultimately hopefully have a positive outcome at the end?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on the same page. What about, and just to kind of wrap this up, this has been great, Rachel. What do you think has been your biggest challenge, or even what has been your biggest mistake in your role? And, how did you overcome it? What did you learn from it?
I think one of my biggest challenges is I don't want to be a micromanager. I don't think I'm a micromanager, but I think I know like, okay, this has to get done. And I think you probably say the same thing, like this has to get done. Am I doing it? Like, and sometimes I think where I really struggle is I'd be like, well, it's just easier. I can just do it myself. Like I don't need to call someone and explain how to do it and walk them through it, make a video, make a training. I can just do it. And it'll take me 5 minutes where it might take somebody else 20 minutes. Right. And so I think taking a step back from that as a manager, a lot of times you have to be like, okay, but I'm not always going to be here to do this, or I need to train, the other person how to do this. So I can take a day off and I know everything's covered for me. Right. Like, and so I think that's one of my weaknesses of I move really fast. And a lot of times it is just easier for me today in the moment to do it myself, but to look at, okay, what's the big picture? What's the roadmap? How do I enable the person that I'm managing to step up and eventually take over my role so I can do the next thing? And you can't get there if you don't give over some of that control along the way and show people how to do it for themselves. So I think
Yeah.
that's something I know I struggle with. Uh, I'm still struggling with it. I'm still working on it, but trying to get better at it.
Yeah, this is awesome, Rachel. Thank you so much for everything you do for Treeline. I mean, really, you have been just such a great asset to the organization. You're so fun. You're awesome to work with. And you've done so many great things for the organization. I can't thank you enough. So thanks for taking a little bit of time to introduce yourself to our community and just share so much great insight on, Treeline, your background, and how you've helped the company grow.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It was great. I appreciate the time as well.